Okay, so today we're diving into something pretty uh, pretty heavy and pretty human, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
We're going to be looking at the experience of raising a child with special needs.
Right.
And, we've got some articles, we've
Yeah.
got comments that we pulled from Reddit, and we did some of our own research too. And really what we're trying to do is just kind of get into the emotional landscape of that.
Yeah, full experience, right?
Yeah, and I think a lot of our listeners are going to either connect with us directly
Absolutely.
or know somebody who does.
Mhm.
Um, and one of the things that kind of came up over and over again as we were looking at this stuff was that there's this sort of like duality
Yeah,
where there's this immense love,
of course.
but at the same time there's these challenges that
Yeah.
that maybe you wouldn't have chosen. And maybe sometimes you kind of wish things were different.
Right, and that's okay to feel that way.
Yeah. One of the parents that we were reading about said that, it's like revisiting all these nice plans you had for your child and yourself. And so let's unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we need to start out acknowledging is that those feelings of isolation or fatigue or even that yearning, that doesn't negate or invalidate the love that a parent feels.
Right.
Those are all valid responses to a very unique and challenging set of circumstances.
And it seems like there's also this sense of,
Yeah,
people not quite understanding
absolutely.
what it's like.
We saw that a lot in the BuzzFeed comments, particularly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there was this real desire for their children to be seen as not burdens, but as loved,
Yeah, fiercely loved.
Fiercely loved. Yeah, and I think that, part of that feeling of isolation comes from just the lack of relatability.
Right.
Right? Like, other parents maybe just don't get it, or it's hard to find childcare,
Oh, yeah.
or just societal misunderstandings.
Yeah. And then on top of that, sometimes there's this feeling of like you can't even talk about
Yeah.
some of those harder things.
Which
You're
is
judged.
meant-
Yeah.
It's like you're not allowed to feel that way.
Yeah.
But it's so important to acknowledge that those feelings are normal,
Absolutely.
especially given the intensity and the relentlessness of the situation.
So it's, not surprising that all of this intense emotion
Yeah.
can really put a strain on
relationships?
relationships and especially marriages.
Yeah. Yeah. What does the research say about that?
Yeah, what does it say?
Well, it's kind of a mixed bag, One study suggested that about 22% of parents of kids with developmental disabilities experience divorce,
Okay.
which is statistically similar to the general population at like 20%.
Okay.
But when you look specifically at parents of kids with ASD,
With autism.
yeah, some research showed a higher rate, about 23.5%,
Wow.
compared to 13.8% for parents without disabilities.
So that's a pretty big jump.
It is a significant difference, but it's important to remember that these are just averages.
Right.
Every situation is unique.
Yeah, for sure. So for the people who are listening and maybe going through some of this, what are some ways to kind of cope and find some support?
Well, building a strong support network is absolutely crucial.
Yeah. How do you do that?
Well, connecting with other parents who really get it.
Okay.
Either online or in-person support groups.
Right.
They can offer shared experiences, practical advice,
Yeah.
and just that emotional validation.
Yeah. It makes such a difference to not feel alone.
It really does.
It really does. And that reminds me of, have you heard of that welcome to Holland metaphor?
Oh, yeah, it's beautiful.
Can you explain that to the listeners who might not have heard of that?
Sure. So Emily Pearl Kingsley wrote this essay, and she compares the experience of having a child with special needs to planning this amazing trip to Italy. You're so excited to see the art and the culture.
Yeah.
And then unexpectedly, your plane lands in Holland.
Oh.
It's not where you plan to go. And it can be disappointing at first.
Right.
But Holland isn't a bad place. It's just different. It has its own beauty, its own culture, its own things to discover.
It's about learning to appreciate the tulips instead of the Renaissance art.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I guess as we wrap this up, what would you say is the main takeaway?
I would say that it's completely okay to love your child deeply and also have moments where you wish that things were different.
Right.
Those feelings aren't mutually exclusive. They can coexist.
And I think by acknowledging that full range of emotions and reaching out for support
Yeah.
and really embracing the journey, that's how we can move forward with self-compassion.
Absolutely. And it makes me think about how that welcome to Holland idea can apply to other areas of life too. Like,
Yeah.
what if we reframe those unexpected detours?
Right, those times when things didn't go according to plan.
Exactly what unexpected beauty and connection might we find there?
That's a great question. Something to think about.